How you doing, guys? This is Jason Gutierrez, PT here. Going to do a video today on a very important topic, and that is going to be training posterior chain and posterior center of gravity muscles. So what I'm going to call this video is 5 great benefits to training posterior center of gravity. So long story short, what is posterior center of gravity? Posterior center of gravity is transitioning the body of center of gravity from the front to the back via exercise, as in weight shifting or spinal erection exercises. So basically what we're thinking of, guys, is gravity is pulling us over, and the older we get, the harder it is to hold our spine up against gravity, shift our body weight back into our hips, not tend to lean over, not tend to lean forward. So training the opposite motion would be posterior shifting, posterior center of gravity training. So that's basically, what it comes down to in a nutshell. We walk forwards all day. We lean over to pick things up. We sit in a desk and lean over a computer, etc. And this kind of training is the opposite of that. It's actually bringing you back into a place where you're lined straighter into your center of gravity. You can hold yourself better in your center and even shift posterior, which is really where you should be, just slightly posterior. So anterior center of gravity, or forward lean, or trunk flexion, which is bending forward, are common patterns that we see in the body, especially as we get older, as I discuss. So simply training our center of gravity to move slightly posterior will teach us how to activate the posterior chain muscles more effectively. Basically, so every muscle on the back half of your body, if we drew a line down your body front to back from somebody who's standing on the side of you, and they said, I'm going to draw a line down the middle of your body, your front half and your back half. Posterior chain, posterior center of gravity is the back half, right? So we're thinking basically just getting the glutes, the spinal erector muscles really are the two most important, areas in the posterior chain that we will want to activate with our posterior center of gravity training. Other muscles include the trapezius, the ones that kind of, pull your shoulders back, and ones that go from your neck to your shoulders, your lat dorsi, which is, the big old fan muscle where you get the V shape in your back if you start training it. The rhomboids, which pull your shoulder blades back, which I believe are really an important muscle group for shoulder training, etc., and posture as well. And your calves, so your calves will, if you can hold your weight and have strong calves, you're less likely to hurt your ankles, and it's an aesthetic muscle as well, So simply put, we walk forward all day, we sit for many hours throughout the day, and we are not shifted backwards into spinal extension when we sit, right? So again, we're leaning over. So this training is, basically going to take us backwards. So multiple benefits are seen to posterior center of gravity training and posterior weight shifting. So try this exercise real quick. Go ahead and stand up. Stand as straight as you can and just shift. See where your body weight is. Do you feel like you're more on your front toes, like the front third of your foot on your toes, the middle of your foot, or your heel? And most of us are going to be from the middle to the toes. We're not really going to be setting back on our heels, and activating those glutes the way we should, unless you train. So we want to decrease that feeling of being into that, anterior center of gravity by this training. So 5 benefits are: number 1, decreasing strain on the anterior side of the body, which is called the anterior chain, including the anterior hips, the knees, and the feet. So if you just stand there and you lean over just a little bit, feel how your weight transfers to your kneecaps just by leaning over slightly, and that's not good. Your low back is going to strain a little bit, your kneecaps are going to get compressed a little bit, your ankle joints are going to be compressed a little bit. But if you just raise up a little straighter and shift back a little bit and shift into your heels, you can see the difference. You're going to be standing straighter, activating more glutes, and it's just the way to start posterior chain shifting and strengthening. So we don't want to compress ourselves anterior, which is very common. If you sit there and you're typing over a desk, you're even going to compress all the soft tissue over your internal organs in your abdomen. Your shoulders are going to roll forward. It's going to compress, the muscles in the front of your shoulders. Your ribs are going to and shoulder collarbones are going to slide forward and up. We don't want those kind of things. So this posterior chain and posterior center of gravity training is going to help that a lot. So that's number one. Number two, improve balance. So if you think about you're walking and you're step on something unstable, and you're already a little bit anterior because you walk like that anyway. Gravity wants you to pull forward and be pulled forward. So training the opposite of that is going to get you to be stronger and more stable on your feet. So as we get older, we're more into the anterior. We're more likely to lose balance. And training posterior center of gravity will correct the imbalance of a weak posterior chain, or all the muscles on the back half of your body, and get you more control over movement, which is going to mean better balance. And you would see that as you train. Number three, decreasing strain on the spine. When we can't engage our posterior chain with strength, shifting our body weight to our heels, or lengthen ourselves, then again, we're going to be into this anterior center of gravity. So we want to train ourselves to lengthen up against gravity and shift into those heels, so we have more control over a nice neutral spine, right? So if we're slouched over, we're in like a posterior tilt at our pelvis, shoulders are rolling forward, and that's like a sitting desk job type person. If we're, at attention, as in a soldier, we may be too much of an arch in the back. So we want to be somewhere in the middle of those two. And just shifting back onto your heels and standing up a little straighter, you're going to just be, straining the spine a lot less day to day. Gravity is compressing down on the spine. If we're anterior, for a little bit trunk flexed, we're going to get more compression going through that back and more strain as well. So standing up straight, shifting our weight back to our heels, and doing things to strengthen that movement is really going to change the strain on the spine and make it less. Number four, increase control with functional movements, as in squatting, picking things up from the floor, lifting things overhead, and standing up from a sitting position. So again, if you're sit down on the edge of your chair, right? Sit on the edge of your chair and slouch over, and then try to stand up and see how difficult it is. Or if you're sitting further back in your chair slouched over, it's even harder. But if you scoot a little closer to the edge of your chair and you sit up a little straighter and you drive through that posterior chain and you activate those glutes and those hamstring muscles and your spinal muscles that pull you up straight, you're going to be a lot stronger standing up. So as in a squat, another thing you would do functionally, if you can engage those glutes and stick those hips back behind you as you squat down, and you have the posterior chain kicking in, you're going to minimally strain your body. You're going to be able to hold yourself up. And it's just very important as we get old to be able to do that, so things wear down slower. And number five, increased recreational and athletic performance. So by feeling stronger in our ability to hold ourselves straight, and hold our center of gravity slightly posterior. So again, stand there, shift your weight back to your heels a little bit, lengthen that spine a little bit, you're activating posterior chain. And of course, you can continue to strengthen this in multiple ways, multiple exercises, and I really focus on that with the majority of my clients that are postural, spine, knees, hips. We got to get the posterior chain active. Basically, it's going to transition into the most effective parts, or the most fun parts of your life. It's going to be effective to do that. So hiking, climbing mountains, walking on the beach, gardening and landscaping. If your posterior chain is strong and your posterior shifting is strong, and you can hold your weight back into your back half of your body, and then you lean over, you're just going to be able to control those movements, minimize strain, and just have so much more strength and muscle activity as you do those movements, which means that's going to translate over into being stronger later in life, because your body and brain have trained those motions with the proper activation of musculature. So that's the top five, guys. A side note, I think brain and body connection is very important as well. So again, we move anterior throughout the day with every step we take. Nobody walks around backwards. Nobody walks sideways, which would probably be good for us to do that, as silly as it sounds. But we've just got to learn how to activate this posterior center of gravity and posterior chain and teach the brain to connect to the body more effectively. Something I used to do would be to walk 10 minutes on a treadmill backwards before I would weight train. And I always felt so much more in control of my posture as I was performing every repetition, because if I'm leaning over a massage table or I'm sitting working on somebody's neck, then I go right to the gym. My center of gravity is anterior. So think about it. You drove to Cruces, you drove north, you drove south for an hour or two, and your center of gravity is going to be forward. You're going to be compressed through your spine, or your center of gravity is going to be forward, or both. So this is just really important. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. More videos to come and more performance of the actual exercises for the posterior center of gravity training. Thanks so much.